Hello friends, welcome to Intuites.
Session on Azure Databricks. Azure Databricks is basically a Apache Spark based big data analytics service by Microsoft Azure. Today in this session, we are basically going to understand how we can use this service to solve data science and data engineering problems. So now let's go ahead and start off with the agenda. Alright guys, so first of all, we'll go ahead and understand what is Azure Databricks and then move on to discuss why do we actually need it. After that, we're going to talk about how does Azure Databricks basically work, and then talk about the various Databricks utilities which are out there, which you can use in order to implement your big data workloads. Finally, we're going to talk about how you can integrate Azure Databricks with Azure Blob storage and implement a project that we are going to go ahead and show you in this session.
What is Azure Databricks? Before we actually understand what Azure Databricks is, we need to understand what Databricks is because they are two separate entities. Databricks was founded by the original creators of Apache Spark. It was developed as a web-based platform for implementing Apache Spark basically. So normally you would implement Apache Spark with a locally hosted cluster. With the Databricks software, you get the option of interacting with your Spark framework using a web-based UI. It provides automated cluster management and IPython styled notebooks. So the best thing about Databricks is that the cluster management is automated completely. So it's completely software based. So you absolutely do not need to manage any aspect of the cluster manually. All of it is automated. And on top of that, you get IPython style notebooks. So if you're coming from a data science or data analytics background, so you must be familiar with Jupyter notebooks. So that is what essentially IPython notebooks are. So you get them pre-installed with Databricks. So you have your cluster, you have your notebooks pre-installed, you launch your notebook on top of the cluster. Whatever code you execute in that notebook will utilize the full functionality of the cluster that you have if you're using the Spark libraries. So the two features we need to focus on when talking about Databricks would include automated cluster management and coding notebooks. So now that we know what Databricks is, we can move on to what Azure Databricks is. So when we move Databricks to a cloud service, for instance, Microsoft Azure, it's called Azure Databricks. It is the jointly developed data and AI cloud service from Microsoft and Databricks for data analytics, data science, data engineering, and machine learning. So essentially all activities related to data, you can use Azure Databricks for that, especially if you're dealing with big data. So we can see when we combine Databricks with the Microsoft cloud service, which is Microsoft Azure, we get our Azure Databricks service. So if we look at the architecture that is followed by Azure Databricks, it is a cloud service. So it lets you set up and use a cluster of Azure instances or Azure virtual machines, and all of these virtual machines are combined together. They have Apache Spark installed on top of them, and it functions in a way similar to your big data cluster, where following a master worker nodal dynamic. Similar to how you would install your local Hadoop or Spark cluster or your big data cluster. So if we look at a diagram now, we can see that on the left hand side, right over here, we have our remote side client. This is the device that we're using to access our Azure Databricks service. Then we initiate our remote access to our Azure Databricks console, say your web browser. And then that's all we need to do. Here is where we will be basically interacting with, right? We wouldn't be able to see the actual servers. We wouldn't be dealing with any of the complexities of maintaining the actual instances that we are running for our cluster, the nodes that we are running for our cluster. We don't need to deal with that. Azure Databricks manages all of that for us. So once we send our commands to our Azure Databricks service, it will send those commands to the cluster that we have for the Spark cluster that we have, and we will get our use cases resolved. And when dealing with cloud services, the main advantage is abstraction. So we do not need to deal with any of the complexities of the cluster. So that is why we have the invisible icon over here, because we're not dealing with the cluster directly. So now let us move on to why Azure Databricks. Why do we use Azure Databricks as a service as opposed to any other means of analyzing data or big data? So since Azure Databricks is a cloud-based service, a Microsoft managed cloud-based service at that, it already has several advantages over traditional Spark clusters, which means that locally hosted Spark clusters or locally hosted Databricks clusters, when we are using Azure Databricks, we get several advantages over them. So let us look at some of the benefits that we get when using Azure Databricks. So firstly, an optimized Spark engine. So what does this mean? Data processing with auto scaling and Spark optimized for up to 50x performance gains. So 50 times performance gains, right? So say if you're hosting a local Spark cluster in your office space or in your server room, you don't have such complex features as auto scaling or optimization of your Spark engine. You don't have those features automatically available to you. You have to manually adjust a lot of things. You have to manually install or remove nodes from your cluster. So when you're dealing with a Microsoft paid service, when you're dealing with a Microsoft cloud service, you get auto scaling features with it. So depending on the use case that you have, depending on the workload that you currently are dealing with, Microsoft has the option to scale up your cluster or scale down your cluster. So it helps you reduce costs and it optimizes the cluster requirements, the cluster hardware settings according to the complexity of the job that you have at hand. Then machine learning. So there are pre-configured environments with frameworks such as PyTorch, TensorFlow, and scikit-learn already installed. So we will get into this when we get into the Databricks utilities. But basically the point is all of these libraries such as PyTorch, TensorFlow, and scikit, we can get pretty easily when we're using Databricks instead of having to manually download those libraries and installing them into our environment. And then MLflow. Track and share experiments, reproduce runs, and manage models collaboratively from a central repository. So MLflow is a feature provided to you by Microsoft Azure, which helps you basically collaborate with your teammates that you may have in your data analytics team or your data science team. You can share your experiments. You can try to reproduce the runs with the models that have been created. You can manage the models that you've created, and you can manage them from a central repository. So you can push and pull all of the models that you've created and deposit them into a central repository so that your teammates can access them as well. Then one of the best features that you get with using Databricks in general, not just Azure Databricks, is choice of language. So especially in Microsoft Azure Databricks, when you're launching a notebook, once you've set up the cluster, once you're launching the notebook, you get an option to start your notebook in the preferred language that you would require, right? So you can start up the notebook in Scala or Spark SQL or .NET. So whether you use serverless or provisioned compute resources, you're able to do that. So the best thing about this is that you can get started with your use case pretty easily. You are not dealing with a lot of setup over here. You're not dealing with a lot of administrative job right now. You're only dealing with the use case. You're only dealing with analyzing data, processing data, visualizing data, or whatever your use case may be. So the next feature would include collaborative notebooks. So quickly access and explore data. So notebooks obviously can be opened by others as well. You can simply share the notebooks. The other people, the other teammates can look at your code. They can execute that code. They can make changes to that code. They can make modifications better, efficiently optimize the code. So all of this is basically accessible in a cloud environment pretty easily. You don't have to manually share anything. So quickly access and explore data, find and share new insights, and build models collaboratively with the languages and tools of your choice. Delta Lake. So Microsoft Azure gives you the service of Delta Lake. So you can bring data reliability and scalability to your existing data lake with an open source transactional storage layer designed for the full data lifecycle. So when you're using your Databricks with Delta Lake, you can have your data already indexed for you for faster transactions. Integration with other Azure services. So the best thing about cloud services is that there are other cloud services for various other things as well. So this is the case for AWS, this is the case for Google Cloud, and this is the case for Microsoft Azure as well. So when you're creating your Azure Databricks instance, when you're creating your cluster and your notebook, you can also integrate with other Azure services. So these could include Azure Data Factory, Azure Data Lake Storage, as we discussed before, Azure Machine Learning, if we are dealing with complex machine learning models, and Power BI if we are dealing with business intelligence. Other features would include interactive workspaces, so the easy and seamless coordination between data analysts, data scientists, data engineers, and business analysts. So people coming from a data background, a coding background, or even from a business analyst background can have a smooth collaboration between them because these workspaces are interactive and easily accessible by one another, and enterprise grade security. So another good thing about cloud services is that you get security by default, and these companies, they are legally liable for any data breach or data loss or any attack by any attacker, right? So it is their job because we're paying them to protect our data. So we get enterprise grade security already available with our Microsoft Azure Databricks workspace. The native security provided by Microsoft Azure ensures protection of data within storage services and private workspaces. So we already get that regardless of we're using a Microsoft Azure storage service or if we are using workspaces in Databricks itself, we can be absolutely sure of enterprise grade security and production ready. So you can easily run, you can easily implement and monitor your heavy data oriented jobs when you're running big data jobs on your notebook or your cluster. And you can get the job related statistics that you're currently running very easily as well. Because a cloud service such as Databricks, Microsoft Azure Databricks helps you monitor that. How does Azure Databricks work? So using Azure Databricks is actually not that hard because you only have to deal with a few UI elements that you get with Microsoft Azure on the default. You have to enter some details, and according to that, your cluster or workspace will be started. So it's pretty easy, and we'll see that when we reach the hands-on section. But before we actually get to the hands-on section, we need to deal with Databricks Utilities first. So this is a Databricks exclusive utility set. So this is basically the set of commands that you already get pre-installed with your Databricks setup. So outside of your normal Python Spark or Scala Spark setup that you have these external commands in order to install libraries or packages, or in order for you to integrate various services that you may have. So say you have a file available on your data storage service in your Microsoft Azure, and you need to import that file. So you cannot directly do that when you're using Python with Spark. So you need some external element attached to it. So that is where dbutils comes in. So dbutils help us perform a variety of powerful tasks, which include efficient object storage, chaining notebooks together. So if you have multiple IPython notebooks, you can chain them all together and perform their functionalities in a sequence. And it also helps you to work with secrets. So these secrets are with regards to authentication. These could be passwords, certificates, or keys in general, like public and private key pairs. So all of those things you can basically configure into your dbutils in order for you to authenticate into another Microsoft Azure service, and then you can essentially import your data from there, which we will see in our hands-on. So one thing to note over here is that dbutils are not supported outside notebooks. So you can only use dbutils when you've launched a Python or a Scala notebook with your cluster that you've created, with your Spark cluster that you've created. So dbutils are not supported outside of notebooks. Integrating Azure Databricks with Azure Blob Storage. So Azure Blob Storage and Azure Databricks are both services provided to you by Microsoft Azure. So these are two separate services, but as long as you're using the same resource group, you should be able to combine these two. So why would you need to combine these two? Let us see that. Microsoft Azure provides a multitude of services. It is often beneficial to combine multiple services together to approach your use case. So basically the advantage of combining multiple services together is that you don't need to engage your local hardware into anything. Like currently, I'm using my laptop to look over this presentation. So I want to keep my laptop clean, or maybe my laptop is of a lower hardware configuration. Maybe I don't have enough disk space, right? So in that case, I would want to use the cloud services to handle all of my use cases. So I want to use the cloud service to handle my big data storage needs. So I would store it into an Azure service that I have. I need the cloud service to process my big data. So for that, I'll use Azure Databricks. So all of my use cases are being solved by the online services provided to me by Microsoft Azure. So say if you want to integrate two services such as Databricks and Blob storage, then this is the workflow or architecture for that. So you're the user, you have your device present to you, available to you. And what you'll do basically is you'll interact with a coding notebook. Right. So this coding notebook is a IPython or a Jupyter notebook that your Azure Databricks will create for you. So the way this works is you interact with your Azure Databricks console. You launch your coding notebook. You type some commands into your coding notebook. The coding notebook commands are then sent to the Databricks service, and the Databricks service sends those commands to your Azure cluster. Right. So the cluster that you've created. After you've created your Databricks workspace, and you've created this notebook on top of that cluster. So those commands go into the cluster. Then depending on the authentication provided to the cluster with regards to your Blob storage account, the authentication details are sent to the Blob storage service. The data is fetched from the desired directory. It is brought back inside the cluster. The data is processed, and you see your output on your coding notebook. Now, this works twofold also. So you can directly upload your data to your Microsoft Azure service. Once you've uploaded that data over there, you can then access your coding notebook and access that data from your Azure Databricks service, and then process it and then get your results. And from then on, you can also store the output that you've created back into your Blob storage space. So all of this is very easily handled and seamlessly integrated together. So now that we've discussed the architecture, let us look at how to actually implement this with our hands-on section. So now that we've gone through the introduction to Azure Databricks, we will now be heading over to the hands-on section of things, where we'll be integrating Azure Databricks with another Microsoft Azure service, which is Azure Blob Storage.
Which is visible my screen. See, yesterday I gone through this concept, and what I understand is that if you go with the community edition of the Databricks, you can work on that. But the problem is, when again I will take some of the concepts in the Databricks, then I need to switch on to the Databricks to the Azure, and then I found a couple of points there. The interface changes is there, new things which is ideal for your job perspective that is not there in the community edition. All these things taken into consideration. Let's go with the approach with the Databricks from the Azure portal itself. Okay. I took it as a because my subscription is pay as you go. It's like I can pay the amount that it will come up, and we'll do the cost reduction as well. But for you, you just register yourself to the Azure portal. I think you should have done it now, right? Is it done for everybody? Am I asking a ghost question? Hello?
Yes, Samir. Okay, I joined just now. What is the question?
Okay. Now others, okay, I will explain you more. Now others?
Yeah, I will do it today. From the past few days, I could not able to attend. I will do it today. So I'm following the recorded videos.
Yeah, I will
Yeah.
complete today, Samir.
Samir,
I go through the video.
You done it, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. So thank you. I think this is not good. Yeah. Like how you can say that you have not registered for the portal or Azure till now? 2-3 classes already happened, right? Okay. So Morgan,
I registered the Azure portal, right? I registered with
Okay.
everything. Okay.
So I was saying that like in the starting of the classes, no, we have decided that let's go with the Azure Bits, the community edition, which is free for 1 year and all. Then we can switch into the database through the Azure, right? So get all the concepts now. So yesterday, while thinking of this planning, I realized that that is not a good idea. In the sense, we will do some practice on the community, and that interface and the Azure Databricks interface is totally different. Okay, and even lots of concepts which is there on the Azure Databricks which is not there in the community. So it will be again a burden for me to explain everything in a flow. So what I have decided now, let's not go with the community edition. Let's go with the Databricks which is coming from the Azure portal itself. So that's what I was asking, whether you guys have registered yourself to the Azure portal or not. Okay, if not, please do it today. And I have just created to save the time and all, I just created a already workspace related to Azure Database, but I will show you how I have created and all everything. So what exactly, whenever you log into the Azure portal, this space will be empty for you, okay, rather. So on the search on the top, right, search for the Azure Databricks. Okay, or you can type it directly, something like that, data bricks. So it will come up the Azure Databricks. I already have a workspace, but let's create it for your sake. So just create and just give a name. Okay, I'm just creating a resource already there for me. So let's see, practice resource group. You need to create it and just give a name. Okay, the only thing is I have gone through, there are different pricing tiers are available. Okay, one is the standard, one is the premium, and one is the trial. So I am going to the premium because in a real time when you work on a project on a company level, that will be premium only because it will consider all the features. So I am going with that approach. You can go with the trial or you can go with the standard based on your capacity. Okay, it's not burden for you like we are going for this one. But if you go with the trial approach, then after 14 days, you have to change your email and register again for the portal, right? Because the 14 days will be gone. Then we can register the portal.azure.com with a different email and then create another database workspace and another 14 days. That we can switch on, switch off, we can do it. Okay, understanding? Are you following me? What I'm saying?
Yes. What about the standard one? Standard one also is a free?
No, no. These two are the chargeable components, but it's not that charge. Murugan, I can say, if you want to manage it properly, the billing will be very less. It's not like a very high cost and all. But still, I would suggest go with this. Once you get a familiar with the environment and everything, then we can go for the other like premium and all. Okay. That's it. I was to say. I am going to the premium tools, and once you create this workspace, it will comes like this. Okay. So some workspace name, whatever I have created, Databricks practice workspace I have given, and if you click on this, then it will create a launch the workspace. Even there is one URL also will be there, which is the URL for a login. Actually, sometimes we will not come to the Azure portal and go to the Azure Database as well. So in a company, what will happen is they will give this URL to you, something like this. HTTP, some your server name, Azure Databricks.net. Okay, somebody will give into this. You can just directly hit into the URL and it will open up the Azure Database. Make sense? Is it
Okay.
making sense? And when you open up that one, this is your portal. It's completely different whatever is there on your the community edition. The first thing first, your Azure will come here, the Microsoft Azure Database, instead of only the database because it is inside the Azure portal. Okay, let me introduce to all the components to this. Okay, so first thing first, if you consider this thing, there are three components now available inside. Is it visible or it is very small? The fonts and all. Is it okay? Just
Yes,
clearly
sir.
visible to you? Okay.
Yeah.
So there are mainly three areas are there right now for the Databricks. One is the data engineering, which we will follow, which we will work on. One is the machine learning, which is out of the scope for us. And this is the SQL one. As I told you that when now they have introduced the SQL way to the Databricks. Like, and this is available on the premium tier only. Because I have selected the premium tier, that's what I'm getting the SQL. So it is more of a like a how you are working on your the SSMS, right? Storing the data, querying the data, all this. Because SQL editor also is available. Okay, you can create your own warehouse. If you click on the SQL warehouse, you can create your own warehouse. You can have the SQL editor where you can write the query. So this is more of a like to handle the data in the form of a structure like the SQL. Okay, this is the way. Making sense? But our focus is not here. our focus will be on the data engineering, like how you can write the code in the Python and the Spark SQL, all this stuff. Okay. Any questions up to here? Do let me know.
Yeah, Samir, after the trial, 14 days of trial, we are registered by some other mail, right? So it will take how many days? Yeah, for trial?
Again 14 days.
14 days only. So after each 14 days, we have to register again with another email. Is it?
But
Okay.
but for that there is a trick. So if your 14 days is expiring, let's take on your workspace, on your share, you have created couple of notebooks, right? That will be not there. So either you need to export that into your local, keep it handy, and whenever you create a new profile, just import it. I'll show you. So let's take, suppose here is the export button is there. Hmm? So there is an import and export on that particular folder. So either you, before your expiry date, like DBC archive in the Sims Databricks file, export it into all the components. Like suppose let's say you created 10 or 12 nodes that have some all the codes. So you just export it into a local, and let's say it got expired, then you created new profile and come back and import and select all the files so that your code will be not lost. This is the one thing you need to do it. Making sense? Is
Okay,
it
so
making
we
sense?
can use. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
But this
Samir.
step don't, yeah, this step don't forget to do it. Otherwise, you can keep your running notes in your whatever writing white paper you are doing. Again, you can follow along with that. So that's your choice how you want to do.
Okay, Samir. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So
While,
now,
Amir, while exporting different formats, it was showing, right? Any of the format that we can export it, import it after this?
you can say DBC database Databricks. Even you can for a source file. This will be like a Python file. Would be there. Anything is fine. No problem. Any of the file is fine. But I will suggest go with the DBC. Okay, and just do it. Now, this is just, let's go with the interface here. So here, on top, we have a search. Okay, we can search some open advanced search also, like what are the notebook, what are the jobs, what are the queries, all these things we can do a search. Okay, right now there is nothing. And this is your workspace will come up, whatever the workspace you have created. And here, if you click right now in a real time, I'm saying, if you click on this, there will be one drop down will come and there will be n number of workspace will be there. We can switch on and switch off to different workspace. Suppose you want to, now you are working on a project which is related to DB practice workspace, and suppose tomorrow you have another workspace where you want to work, just click here and change, and there you start working on that. So in real time, if you click on them, there will be like number of workspaces will be there. But in our case, it is one. Okay, you should be make sure on this. Okay, and then these are some notification help. But here, if you click on your email, whatever you register here, there will be some couple of steps will be there. First is the user settings, admin setting, Azure portal, and manage account and logout. Logout is fine. So here, these are the points are more into the admin perspective. Since we are the admin directly because we have enrolled for our own account, we are getting all these steps. Okay. So in a real time, I don't think so. This option will be enabled for you because the admin will be disabled for this things for you. Because admin setting, you are a developer, you are not an admin. Okay. But still, if you click on the user settings, there are some access tokens is there. I will show you this. This will be required when the Azure Databricks needs to be connected to the Power BI. That time you will create your access tokens, and through that we can connect to the Power BI. There is a Git integration is there. We will see that like GitHub integration we can do for the repositories and all. That we will see it. A couple of settings are there. Doesn't matter. Then another setting is there, which is the completely the admin setting, like who wants to access. Okay, so I can add user, I can delete user. What are the settings I want to keep them? All the stuffs will be available. This will be managed by the screen completely by the admin. So we are not bothered about that. I'm not spending time here at all because I don't think so. You will get an access to this software. Okay, this page at least. Okay. Now from here you can go to the Azure portal as well. Directly you can click on that and manage account is the manage account only. So these are the stuffs available. But our main focus would be okay. And it is whatever the screen you are seeing, exactly the same screen we will see in real time as well. Because there will be premium tier and exactly the same. And maybe the look and feel will be slightly changed because day by day, when I'm on right now on the August, right? So in October, when you again log into the Microsoft, like Azure Databricks, the interface could be changed. Features could be same, and then some new features would be coming up, but the interface slightly here and there will be changes. That is fine. But right now, as of now, this is the interface which is available for your Azure. Making sense? Any questions up to here?
No.
Okay. Now here, as you know, now the left-hand side screen will come up. Okay. So if you click on the new, we have n number of things are there, which is not there in case of your community edition, right? So many stuffs will be there. In the workspace now, if you click on the workspace, you can create your own folder as well. Suppose inside the shared folder, you can create your own folder. Add folder. Okay, we'll do that. No worries. We can create your own folder. From there, you can start your journey to create it. The notebook, all the stuffs will be there. Okay, this is the workspace. On the recent page, if you open anything recently, that will be available right now. We have just started. Nothing is there. It's phase one. Nothing will be there. The data, as I told in the last class also, the data will be like where you can store the data in the form of a table. Okay, and from the table you can access the data. Okay, workflows is something like when you are scheduling something. Suppose you are running something, the jobs, right? Suppose you have a flow that will get the data from a source to the transformation and putting in the target. Those workflows will be available or there. The jobs, how we are running it, everything will be available here. We can create a job. We'll see that, like how the workflow is. Workflow is something like the automation procedure of your Databricks jobs, like how the jobs will be running, whether it is a payroll or whatever may be, everything will be available inside your workflows. Okay, and the compute is where you can create your the cluster. So if you compare to the if you are logging in the last 2-3 days to the community edition, we don't have an option all these options in compute. Right? So in this one we have like different types of clusters are there, and when you're trying to create a cluster, so many options also will come up. Okay, again I'm saying that this cluster creation also is not part of your job. Okay, because when you comes up, the cluster is already established. Okay, and in the meantime, suppose your team decided that the cluster, whatever is the setup is there, we need some new cluster, then we need to request it. So there will be some admin people will be, they will request that. This part will be disabled for you. You will not able to create anything like a cluster. Or if you want to create a cluster, then there will be some restriction will be there that we will also will see. Okay, is it making sense? Now, any
Yes.
questions up to here? Now let's go with the. Now I want to just start with the few things that you need to understand on a like let's understand the database, like our user interface, right? Actually I explained you a couple of interface concepts here, so let me put my pen here, and this you need to remember properly. Okay, so there are actually two parts to the Azure Database. Okay, first part is, let me explain here. No, and one part is okay. So the first part is okay. So the first part is your control pane. Could have done it before this control pane inside, and this comes under Databricks subscription. What are the things I will come a part of my control plan, which is comes under the Databricks. So the first thing we'll get is Databricks cluster management. Okay. Second thing is your Databricks interface, the UX. I can say UX. I'll explain you. Don't worry. Okay. Then your DBFS, then your clusters. These are the four components. When actually see, I'll tell you. So here we have our own Azure portal, Azure subscription. Like this is my subscription for my subscription. This is okay. And from here, when you are creating a Databricks, and this is the Databricks, two things are coming. One is Databricks is providing something, and something is coming from your Azure subscription as well. So there are two parts to it. So first, I'm explaining that what if you create a Databricks, what are the components it will provide, okay? And part of the Azure subscription or the user subscription, what are the components we will get, okay? When you create a database. Making sense?
Yes.
So this part is called my data pen, comes under user subs. Okay. So here, what are the components? I will get it here. Let me put it in this one. So they will get first they will get a VNet, which is a virtual network. Then we will get NSG, network security group. I'll show you this. Okay, don't worry. Group. Okay. Then third one, default, there will be Azure Blob storage. Then the fourth one will be your Databricks Workspace. Okay, these are the four components you will get part of your when you create a Azure database or the sorry, you just I'll show you that. So what do you need to do here? So I showed you know how I created this. Remember, like I go into the database and just create a workspace there. That's it. But when you go to your all resources, okay, and if you see here whatever I have created, right, this one, okay, and this is the storage account network virtual network security group. When I created a workspace here, right, so the first thing, it got created a Azure Database workspace. Second, it created a virtual network, which I told you in the VNet, is the VNet. Okay. Then it created a network security group, which is I told you the NSG, and this is a storage account, the name Databricks DB Practice Tools. So these are the four components. Automatically, it will create it. So when you create a practice or Databricks workspace, these are the four components always associated with this. Okay, and the default always stores the data in the Databricks is in the form of a Azure Blob storage, which is not a suited one, and in industry will not store the data in the Azure Blob storage. So we'll see that how we can integrate other storage like the Delta Lake, all the stuffs. But right now, this is the default one. It automatically created. And this blob storage, whatever the storage it is there, it will be connected to the DBFS. This is a Databricks file system. It will provide a storage system. No, so from here, there is the interaction is happening to your blob storage. So this is okay. It's making sense what I'm saying. Are you good?
Samir, could you say what is with respect to the blob storage and DBFS?
Yeah, I'll come to that. So DBFS is a file system, database file system. Databricks is providing a file system for you. It's like a storage. Okay, so whatever you are storing it, the storage space is there. We can now, as per our Databricks, we are going to the Azure Database, no? So our storage it as Azure blobs. So whatever you are storing on the DBFS, that should be integrated to your storage. Okay, so we are not storing any data on the Databricks. So we are storing everything on our own side, on our works. Okay, we are taking the services from the Databricks, we are using it, but storing, manipulation, data, everything we are doing on our. So that's whatever the storage system database is provided, we are integrating to the Azure Blob storage. So this is the storage of our own. Okay, makes sense? And this is the interface, right? How somebody will log into the database. This is very important. So everybody will log to in a real time. They will log in through your Azure AD. So they will log into, okay. As I told you, no, this if you go here, your workspace here, there will be one URL will be there. You can directly hit that, and based on your authentication, AD authentication to the email ID, you will able to log into the portal. So that's what it's all about. Okay. And once you log in, when you in the cluster, right? Suppose you are planning to create new cluster and all. Suppose you have a one node cluster, you want to create a two node cluster, you want to create a three node cluster, all the stuffs, right? So you requested a three node cluster. So that cluster also will be created on your subscription. This is your subscription. This is database, right? Database. So that also will be created under your subscription only. And that time when you are requesting a cluster, another services of Azure will work. That is called, that resource is name called Azure Resource Manager. Azure Resource Manager. And this services will help you to create different clusters. What is cluster, guys? Cluster is nothing but a machine only. Okay, and here inside your network, all the VMs will be created like VM1, VM2, VM3, VM4. So this is an overall like the Databricks architecture, how it looks like, and under the hood it behaves in this way. So somebody can ask you that, okay, we are using, this is a common question in interviews sometimes, very basic question, like the Databricks itself is a company, right? And we are using that services in our Azure portal. So something like what I'm trying to say here in this case is, in the Azure, go to the your all resources, or sorry, all services. So we have n number of services are there. Okay, few services are inherited directly on the Azure. In the sense, we no need to go to outside of the Azure portal to work on that. Okay, so it will be there itself, like the Azure Blob Storage, ADF. ADF also will be outside. Storage account, Azure Keyboard. Couple of services are there. We no need to go outside of the Azure portal. but couple of services is like just like a third party. So they integrated their services inside the Azure, okay, where you can use that third party, just like in this case of Databricks. So they have given a components for the Databricks inside the Azure, part of your subscription, but you can use in outside. So since if you click on that, it will be open up another URL which will be integrated, right? So here the question would be like how the data is secured when you're coming outside of the subscription, right? Because this is one interface where we know that this is secure, but how we can make sure that when you are storing the data on the database and how it will be stored and how it will be secured. This is the architecture. Because Databricks is not storing anything on their subscription. Okay, it is just providing a mechanism where you can manage your cluster. We can work on a DBFS, which is providing a storage area. You can have a cluster where you can request a cluster. But once you request anything, right, whether you want to create a cluster, it will be the Azure Services, which is the Azure Resource Manager, which will be get activated, and it will create cluster on your subscription, and even the storage which is there on the DBFS, it is mounted to the storage which is create part of the Azure Database. So I can say that all the data, everything will be stored on your subscription, so that your data is okay. Is it making sense?
Yeah, Samir. In Databricks, we are getting all the service. And in under user subscription, we are working in open source, and we are getting some service from Databricks, right?
No, what is that again? Tell me.
Yeah, in under Databricks subscription, we are getting all the service from the Databricks. In under user subscription, we are working on open source, and we are getting some service from Databricks. Is it the one?
No. So you are just using the Databricks, the component inside your Azure portal subscription, just like this. If you click on this, this is the third party, and you are creating a data warehouse, where source, and from there you are moving to the Databricks subscription. And what the Databricks subscription is providing, it's just providing interface. Okay, and rest of the things, the data storage, and suppose you want to create some cluster, there is a like utility is there on the Databricks that you can create a cluster. But end of the day, when you are creating a cluster, the Azure services will be activated. That is called the Azure Resource Manager to create it, and everything inside your subscription. Nothing is there on the database. That's what I'm trying. Okay,
Okay, Samir. Yeah,
makes
got it.
sense. Got it,
Yeah,
right?
Samir, got it. Yeah, thank you.
Just give me a second.
So your voice is not audible.
Oh, I was on mute. Just give me a
Yes.
second. I'll be back. I'm on mute. Just give me a second. I'll be back.
Hello.
Hello? Am I audible, guys?
Yes, Samir.
Yeah, yeah.
Hello.
So just yours is not audible. Hello. Can somebody ping Deepu? I think saying that you to rejoin. I just will be back in a minute. Eh? Just give me a second. Okay. So I'm there. Okay. Now I'm still audible, right?
Yes.
Yes, Samir.
You understand what I understand what I have explained from this architecture standpoint. Any questions you guys have? We are good. Silent is yes, right?
Yes, Sam.
So now let's understand for the first thing first, because to work on the Databricks, we need to create the cluster. Okay. So here, actually, when you go to the normal like clusters technology, right? There are two types of cluster can be created in Databricks. Okay? First is the all-purpose, and second one is the job cluster. So if you see here, there is the all-purpose compute and there is a job. We'll see the pools also. Don't worry, pools also will select. And one more thing, this pool, this policies, maybe if you're not going a premium tier, this will be not available. Pools, policies. Okay, I think pools will be there, if I'm not wrong, but policies will be not available when you are going for a standard tier. Like if you go for a premium tier, then only the policies will be coming. So that is not that important if it is not there as well. Okay, but I will explain you the how the policies works. Anyway, so the start with the all-purpose compute and the job compute. Okay, so the basically the all-purpose compute is something like it will create manually. So we need to create the resources manually. Second is like it's persistent, permanent. It's like once you created it, it will be there for you unless until you delete it. Third thing is like it is suitable for the normal workloads, right? Suppose you want to automate some jobs, you want to run through that, everything will be there, and it will be shared across many users. You can share that resources across the user. That's the way the this one. And the job is something like suppose you have a job, and I'll show you what is job exactly. But right now I can say it will be created by job. Suppose you are running something in your workflows and all. So this computation will create it there, okay? And like at the end when the job got successfully run, this computation will be deleted. So it is just like it's not a persistent. It is just like terminated by the end of the job. Okay. And if you see the difference here, click on the all-purpose compute. We have a option to create, but when you go to job compute, there is no option to create. Okay. So that we will create through the workflows on. You put the workflows, click on the job, and you can create a job. Okay. Create a job. Then you can give the name, which workspace, and everything will be there. That will be available now. After that, it will be available on the job compute, and that is only applicable to the job runs. We will see later in the stage when you create the workflow. That time the job will be started. That time the job compute will start, and once the job got finished, that computation is gone. But the all-purpose compute will be the permanent one, which will be work. Okay, is it making sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now
Samir,
let's
in real time also cluster creation will be done by us.
no, but you should know the every concept on the cluster creation as well, because they will ask you a couple of questions from the cluster creation as well. Okay, so let's understand. Because now let's go to the all-purpose compute and click on the create n number of options. N number. This is not available in your the community edition. So the first thing first is like whether I will go for a policy. I have a different policies here, like the personal compute, the power user compute, the legacy set compute, all these steps. I will discuss that. Then the main thing is whether I want to go for a multi-node or I want to go for a single node. Okay. Then access modes. Access mode is single user, shared, no isolation shared. Which one I have to select? I need to understand all this concept. Then I should have a runtime option, like which one I will need to choose. So here, if you see the standard one is for the data engineering. If you are working on a master like machine learning, then you need to select the machine learning the cluster. Okay, it will be ML will come up. Okay, but otherwise it will be all the standards. Then there is a huge photon acceleration. This option is there. What is photon? I will explain you. Then the worker type, which type I will select based on that how many workers or how many maximum workers I need to create it, and terminated up how many times, like 120 minutes the ideal time. If it is not there, then it will be get terminated, something like that. Okay, so let's discuss all of things here one by one everything. Okay, so let's first understand policies. I will come later. Okay, the single node and multi-node in the sense in a multi-node structure, right? So there will be how it will be looks like. Let's do that. So in a multi-node structure, right? So this is your one VM, and there will be n number of VMs. Will be one, two, let's say four VMs. And this is your master, okay? And these are all the slave or the child node, or these are the parent node. These are the child nodes, and the child nodes will be interconnected to the childs. Okay. So this is an example of a multi-node cluster. Okay. Any questions? And this is a usual scenario, and this is the architecture for your real-time application. Like it will be a multi-node node. So there will be a primary node and there will be different child nodes will be available. So that any process comes to hit the primary, it will be get distributed across the child based on the resources available. Okay, is it making sense?
Yes, Samir, is there any sharing between the child or only it will get from the parent only in this
Master.
case?
It will be from the parent only. There will be
Okay.
no sharing with the child.
Okay, Samir, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah. And if I select single node here, I'll come to the policy later. But if you click on single node, then it will be a single node shared and everything, right? So there is an option will be there. So multi-node, the changes available here is that if you see here, if you select the single node, this part will be gone, the worker type. Okay. If you select the single node, this option is going out because we are not multi-node now. So how many workers you want to create? It will be minimum 2 workers and maximum 8. You can go with this approach or as per your company policies and all, how much you want to create. Okay. So what is minimum, what is maximum here? So it will be minimum. It will start with the minimum of 2 workers, and all the remaining workers will be in a a idle state, and whenever it is required, then it will just give it back. Like the process is running, let's say the two workers is already busy, and your another process is coming up, then the third worker node will start. Again, the same thing. All the three nodes are busy. Any other process comes up, the fourth node will be. So like that, the cluster management will be happening from there. So here we have a choice of 2 and maximum 8. You can change it based on your requirement and select whichever the worker type I want to go for. Okay, each worker type has a different price. So normally, DS3 V2 is okay. It's like an important topic. We can do that. Okay, is it making sense? As of now, it is okay.
Is there any restriction on how many number of clusters per one user can create?
User creation on the cluster, like I don't think so. Anything we have like that.
Suppose today I'm creating one cluster. Tomorrow also can I create the same other cluster?
Yes, you can do that. But okay, your question is correct, but the context, what I'm guessing is, what you want to ask is that you mean to say that the cluster configuration or number of clusters, like
Number of clusters creation.
number of clusters, I don't think so. There is any restrictions we have, but we'll not create it. Rather, I can say, okay, this whatever the policies we're discussing is just for our understanding, and because we need to create our own cluster while working, that's what I'm explaining. Anyway, this comes up now. Comes to the access mode. Whether you are going for
Samir,
a multi-node, yeah, go
Samir, I have a question. You're talking
ahead.
about the min cluster, minimum two work and max of 8, right? So, and then terminate after 120 minutes
Yeah,
inactive. Okay.
correct.
So, see, for example, if I can reduce that timing, okay, I can give for 60 also. See,
Yeah.
if my process is running, okay, the first process is running in the first cluster, first work node, okay, and then another process is it came, then it started the first one is already busy, then it will go to the second one and then started processing it.
Right.
So after the second one, third one is also running, okay. In that one, when running the third one, the first one is completed. So then when I started the new process, it will go how this allocation will happen. Allocation will happen automatically, or any hierarchy is there to allocate the work.
So that allocation will be taken care by the Databricks only. Like that's the algorithm they are running it. We don't have any
Okay.
control. Right? Actually, we don't have any control that this resources will go to this VM, this resource will go to that VM. No, based on your
There is.
availability, because this is a distributed system, right? So based on your architecture, whatever is available and whatever it feels that the network is going to that way, he will take care. That's why we are using the Database component. We are not maintaining that.
So we are not maintaining that one. Okay.
We are just creating the cluster, and based on the capability, we will take care.
Sameer,
Okay.
Sameer,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
depending upon what Anita asked with respect to the number of clusters that can be created, that depends upon the subscription what we have taken on our plan, right? Upon the workload, I guess something yesterday you had, I don't know whether I'm right. I just wanted to clarify. Depending upon what is our workload, the clusters can be increased or decreased. I don't know whether I understood it correct. Depending upon the subscription plan what we take and the workload what we have.
That's correct. That's correct. But when you go to a real project, there will be three clusters. Will be there. One is the dev cluster, one is the UAT cluster, one is the prod cluster. That's it. Okay. And dev could be single node, multi node. UAT could be single node, multi node, but the production will be multi node. That's it. These are the three
Could you
clusters.
repeat this thing again? What are the three things?
Dev, UAT, prod.
Dev.
Development, UAT, and the production. That's it. These three will be there. And you don't have a choice to create new cluster as well. There is no chance. Okay. Because this is more of an admin job, the cluster creation. And suppose in a cluster you have configured multi-node, let's take minimum 4 and maximum 12. And when you start processing your work, you are facing some challenges. Let's take you have a very big job. And with that configuration, it is not behaving the way you expected. So you want to plan to increase your VM. Then also you will need to request that to the admin people. They will increase. We don't need to increase. This is I am explaining the concept of different options I have while creating the cluster that you need to understand. That's all. So on that note, if I go to single node, I will create a single node cluster throughout this project. Will not go to a multi-node because multi-node will be charged more compared because we are working on our personal space, so we need to be on a cost control also. How we can control the cost that will be taken care because when you are you are working for a company, we don't bother about the cost, right? Should be premium. Now on that note, so the access mode. So there are three access modes are available. One is a single user, one is a shared, and one is a non-isolation. So single means single only. This cluster will be never shared with anybody. This is the cluster of your own who created this, that he will only use this cluster. Okay. In the shared, it will be available for like the premium, everybody who is using this, and supports Python and SQL, all the things. That's a true language it will support it, and we can share it across any user across the org. Okay. And the last one, the no isolation shared. It is the difference between the shared and the non-isolation shared is the difference is something like this one, which I explained you. Suppose request comes up, it feels that you're the first worker node is free, then it will go there. Again, the request comes up, it sees that the first is completely busy, it will go to the second node. But in case of the non-isolation shared, what happens? It will consume everything on the first node. Okay, and when the second will come up, no, all the resources are filled, something like that. So actually, what happens is in the non-isolation share, one process can consume all the processes, and others can be failed, can be possible. Okay? The other one process can fill up everything, other process can be failed. And the problem is, if in case of normal, in the case of shared, right? Suppose you are running a like a parallel jobs. In the sense, you are running a parallel, so you are running two processes, three processes. First process is running, second process is running, third process is running. Let's say first process got failed. In case of shared, what happen is it will not terminate completely the job. It will run the process 2, process 3, and it will give the output and saying that the process 1 got failed. And we need to work on the process 1 why it got failed. Okay? But in case of the non-isolation shared, what happen is one of the process got failed, it will be completely failed for the job. It will be completely okay. This is the difference between your shared and the non-isolation shared. Is it making sense?
Yes.
Okay. So in this case, in our practice, I will go the non-isolation shared because we will work on a normal data and we are good with this approach because as I told, everything on the cloud is a cost. How we are going to use it based on that we need to do the cost. And in real time, it will be the shared one. Okay. And I am using the non-isolation shared. Now here the Databricks the runtime. Okay. So I will create the runtime here. So I will always select the LTS one. Okay. Because the LTS is the good performance and all, and not with the beta version always. Okay, let's go to the LTS, but that's depend again based on your organization. Okay, which the Scala version they want to go for. Okay, that is also a terminology that part we want to select. Okay, that's it. Okay, now I will select, and this is a photon acceleration. I will not select it as of now because this is a what's a new feature? Recently, it got introduced to the Databricks. So this is more of a performance thing. So if you select the photon acceleration, the photon is nothing but it's a what do you call it? It's like a vertical engine from the Databricks through which if you run the process, no, they are saying that it will be more faster, and it's actually faster. So the normal way and the photon way. Photon is a vertical engine process which will be enabled when you do that, and the process will be more faster compared to the normal one, to the photon. Okay. In our case, we will not use the photon as I told cost management. Okay. So we'll just unselect this. I would not want to this one. Okay. Then I will select the node type. Let's go with the DS3V2. I need a 14 GB memory of 4 cores. You can go for anything, 56 GB or everything, or you have a lot many options. Okay. Which and every is there. But I will go with the normal thing, 14 GB and this one. And termination time, instead of 120 minutes, okay, I will go with the 20 minutes for cost reduction. Because how much time your cluster is active, that much is the charge. Because it is like 0.7 Databricks unit per hour. You see, 0.75. So we'll calculate the cost also in the next class, like how the pricing will work for the Databricks and all. Okay. So these are the options we have. Okay. Any questions?
No.
We're good. Now in the advanced option, and you can put a tag also. Tag is something like why you created this cluster. Because sometimes anybody comes up and saying that okay, this is the cluster why you create. So if you put a tag like the description and all, you can put it and you can change the name as well. And change this name. It is not a like this. My name is coming in the cluster, right? So I don't want to do that. So I will create a cluster name is that like Databricks. Then I say practice hyphen cluster. Okay. fine. This is the way I will create it. Okay. And one thing I think I'm missing here is select. I think let's select a personal compute here. Confirm single user access. Okay, personal unrestricted. Go then unrestricted. As of now, unrestricted. Let's fine. And go to next lesson. I don't want. I just selected. Nice. 20 minutes. Driver times. Fine. Okay, I will go for a single node. Sorry, just mistaken. Single node. Okay. No, I don't want the 14. That's it. I think. Okay. And if you click on the advanced option here, finally, you can have your some Spark configuration. You can do it here, and we can select the logging as well, like destination, DVFS, and all. And suppose on the start itself, okay. Suppose when the cluster will be started, you want to import something. Let's say you want to import some Python packages on the start itself. Right? When the cluster start, you want to import some packages. Okay, so that you can define in the advanced software in scripts. Okay. That what happen is whoever is using this cluster, they no need to import each and every time the Python's libraries or whatever. Okay. So that option is available on your advanced option. So finally everything looks good. Let's create the compute. And it's just creating. It will take some minutes, 5 to 6 minutes, and yeah, go ahead.
Termination time you didn't reduce it, was it with 120?
Oh, sorry. Then I need to delete it and I need to do it. Yeah, you can do that. 20 minutes, make it 20 minutes. Okay, don't put 120 minutes. Because otherwise, if you forget to stop the cluster, no, it will be chargeable. Okay, I should have done it before, but for a demo purpose, I keep it like this. So we could take some time. We need to wait for this. Otherwise, you can't do it. Okay. So, and it is taking more time. But we'll see how to reduce the time of cluster as well. That is also one very important thing. Okay, so that you need to understand that as well. Let's come up. Then I will explain.
Samir, yesterday you told like once we created it, we need to delete it and log off, right? From that one.
That is on community edition. That is not required for here. That is for community edition. Okay.
Yes, Samir, I have a question. When I created the workspace for that Azure Databricks, right? Here, okay, it is asking networking, the steps, encryption, attack, and in the tag they're asking name and value. What is that one?
No, not required.
When you
That is
created,
name and value. It is not compulsory to give it. You can skip it.
it is not able to create it. Okay. See,
Well,
the first step is basics. Basics. I'm creating the resource group and all.
so okay.
Okay.
See my screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now I will not. You stated the pricing tier as standard, premium, whatever maybe. The next
I can select as a trial, right?
Yeah, that's fine. So now I think the next. I'm not selecting anything
Okay.
here. I'm not selecting anything. Text also is not compulsory, right?
See, after that, when you say review and create, right? Click on the review and create. It is not allowing. That's
What
all.
is it saying?
You
No, it will
can.
not.
It is not.
It will not. It will take.
So that's the one. What do you want to give name and tag? That's a mandatory.
No, it's not mandatory. It is not mandatory. It is not saying that it is mandatory, right?
Not
So
showing.
mandatory
Okay.
it will be.
Okay, but when you click review and create, it is not.
No,
Okay, let me try.
it,
Yeah.
it will not. So, and a couple of things I want to just store it. So when you are working on this complete course, right? So we need to work on multiple things. The first is ADLS. I'm talking about the cost perspective because you have a free subscription, you can still go with that. Okay. So the ADLS, like the Azure Data Lake storage, we need to use the storage. So this price is quite negligible. Okay. So because when you register for your Azure portal, this ADLS will come up and some free credits are giving for the Azure portal, and whatever it is giving up, it will be cover up the ADLS. Doesn't matter. So we don't need to pay anything extra for the ADLS. Then we will see the ADF, which is nothing but we are called the Azure Data Factory. Okay. Azure Data Factory is chargeable, but when you run pipelines, what is pipelines? I will discuss it there. So, but once we are ready everything, then only once in a while we will run the pipeline. Okay. So I'll show you that whenever you are running the pipeline, that then there will be charges, and it will comes under that price. Doesn't matter here. Second one, we'll use our the Databricks Azure Databricks jobs, which is I already told you that like job cluster. So this one, when I showed you the all-purpose cluster and one was there in the job cluster, my cluster is ready now. So when you go to the compute here, there is a job cluster also there, no job compute. So that also will create it, but that will be not chargeable because after the job run, okay, this is the third thing. Fourth thing is we will create some cluster pool. Okay, but this is not part of our requirement. Here I'm saying when you go to the compute, there is a pool option, and when you will create a pool, I'll just show you how cluster pool works, and after that, immediately I will delete it because it will be very much chargeable. Okay, but you need to just know the concept how cluster pool works. Then finally, I will delete immediately after creating. And you also suppose you are creating that also, just create it, do it, and delete immediately. Don't keep it. And please, I'm making sure that's right because it is come. The pricing will be comes under our pocket, right? So please make sure that follow a standard rule. Okay, don't follow blind. Like if you're not using, please stop it, delete it. Whatever I will told you, just do on that way so that we will be on a minimum cost constraint. Okay, please make sure
Samir,
and try to focus on it. Go ahead.
If we are doing it on a trial subscription, that
Uh,
means free subscription, all these will be charged. We can do it, right?
but don't keep it. I say
Ah,
there
okay,
are see free is there, but there are some hidden charges is there from always from the Microsoft. So
got it.
I'm also not sure that like if you're going for free and you're keeping the customer for 2 days, how much charge will come up? And that is 100% that there will be some charges. If it still is a free, there will be some charges. So I don't want to make it a hassle there. So just create it, delete it.
So, I mean, okay, how to see what are the processes running? Okay, suppose, okay, I logged in the portal.azure.com, right? After that, and after I did something, I can log off. Okay, then all the process will stop, or something is running
No,
in the background.
no, nothing will be running, but since you created the resources, you are allocating some space for them. So that
Mhm.
resource allocation charges will be there for you. And
Oh,
you can see the billings and all everything. But
no, no. Okay,
other
see, okay, now no, no, no. My question is right, Samir. Now I'm
mm,
practicing it. Okay, I did some
mm,
certain things I created. So
mm,
I did my practice. So I'm going to log off my account from that one.
mm,
Whether it will automatically all the process, any process is running in the background, it will
no,
automatically stop, or I
no.
manually where I can see which are the process are running, overall process, where I can see list of processes running it.
Yeah, see, the Databricks,
Okay.
talking about the right now, the Databricks, I will come to the later stage, others one. Right now,
Mhm.
if the Databricks, if I talked about the pricing, it's depend
Mhm.
upon the cluster, how many hours it got activated. Now it is active. Okay, and we have given a time period of let's say 2 hours. So 2 hours after two
Mhm.
hours it will got terminated. So the charges will be for 2 hours. Okay, if it's 20 minutes, then you need to finish up your work in 20 minutes, and you can just wrap it up. So how many hours your cluster is inactive, that much of charges you get it for the database. As simple as that. Okay. So what I will
Okay.
suggest is that either you will stop it, don't delete it, terminate it, and you can come and you can just start. So you make sure that you are doing that always. In case of this process, no need to delete anything. That was I explained you when I am working on the community edition because that's not dedicated. But here I can still do it. Okay, I can just like stop it for a second, terminate here. Okay, then I can when I will come up, I will resume it so that the charges will be minimal for you. Okay, this is the way you can do.
Okay.
And these are the few things you need to totally manage termination time. So if you follow this process, okay, so data takes 20 minutes, not beyond that. Okay, so if you will do like this, I think the charges will be, if it's a free trial also, if the charges will come up for you, it will be very minimal. And when I'm using the pay as you go also, my charges also will be very. So I need to follow certain rules. This the cloud is always on a trust control. You need to do the cost. Okay, makes sense. And one more thing, last I just want to explain you. We can go to the Azure portal. Okay, I'm just deleting this. Okay, rather it's better to delete it. I will create another one. By tomorrow it will be get ready because you know the how the process would be. But anyway, so here if you search in the Azure portal and search for the cost management. Okay, and if you go to cost management here, you can have a like the invoices. Okay, how much I have paid last, all these things will be coming up. Your payment method, how you want to do the payments, and all these things will be available. And you can put the alerts as well. So the budget, and you can create the cost alerts. Okay, this is I think you should do it. Okay, cost alert. Normally in a free tab, I'm just going with the pay as you go. I can put a cost alert. So I can put a, later I will do it, but if you add it, create a rule, okay, then suppose alert type will be anomaly and view. So I will just do something like that. If the amount is this much of amount, give an alert. Okay, suppose $20 or $30 or $50, whatever maybe. So if it is exceeding that 90% exceedation is happening, then I will create a alert so that it will be intimate to me that your pricing is almost 80% or 90%. Please do something so that by that time I will delete some few objects so that my price will be under control for me. These are the things is for our like practice. This is none of the things will be available for you real time. Okay, and we will never create any custom this rules and all in real time as well, the budgets and all, because we don't have a price constraint there, right? So these are the things we can do it still. Okay. So now what exactly you need to do today? Please like register yourself for the Azure portal if it is not done. If somebody has done it, good. Create your Azure Database free trial. Okay, the 14 days trial, and you should be open up here. And as I told you, just create a your compute storage. That's it. You can do it for this. And this week I'll share the SQL Server project as well if you have a time, because we have not practiced enough on the database so that you can do something. So utilize your time on the SQL Server project for this weekend, even on the Python projects. These two should be on bucket line for this. Okay, making sense? Are you good?
Samir, one question regarding the cluster. Suppose like I'm started, once I'm creating a cluster and continuing doing my other work. If we go further in advanced classes, we will start working on it. But after 2 hours of time, suppose I set the cluster time as like inactivity for 1 hour time. I need to complete that activity within that 1 hour time, because
One
if
time,
we
but
open it for the SQL, right? What we just open it and work on the select statement. If it doesn't give, it gives some error kind of thing, then I can take some other time and work on it. But here, do I need to delete?
no. So once if a termination type of 20 minutes or 1 hour, no, the cluster will be terminated. You just come here and restart. Then it will start again. Okay. Any question? Other question? I'm just stopping the recording.